Instead of having, love for your neighbor and recognizing that you don't know my life. You don't know what I'm going through. You don't know what's happening or why I need to have puppy pads. You know, you don't know. Sorry, guys. Lately, I've just been itchy everywhere. And I know it's the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit, when it comes over you, when she comes over you, things happen. And so here we come to April 1st. Now, here is the trippy part, okay? So I wrote April 1st, 2024, but on the second page, the adjoining page, I wrote April 1st, 2023. And I was like, what happened on April 1st, 2023? So I had to, is that in this book? I think it's in this book. No, it's in this one. And it's really incredible because I was going back through my previous notebooks and I was like, God, why did you have me write like this? I'm like, sometimes I can't even follow my own writing. I'm like, wait, what? 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 I don't understand. Because I wrote like it's one of those flip notebooks. So I skip pages in between notes of dates, and then God had me go back and write in between those pages on future dates. So like if it was something that I wrote from 2021, and then at the end of or at the beginning of 2021, at the end of 2021, I'm writing dates in between the early dates of 2021. It's just the way God was leading me in. And it floored me when I realized what he was doing. And I was like, what? Okay. Mm. Mm. Okay, so let's see here. Bear with me because I know there is a date from 2023. So he literally had me go all the way back to like before I moved from California. And it was so incredible the way that he had me do this. So before I moved to Arizona, moved back from California, he had me write down what happened like right before I left. And it was interesting because the math doesn't add up. Not the way I wrote it, but I understand it. Okay. So he had me count out how much money I had on me and in my account, and just the money that I had available to me. Like I didn't have a lot of money. So in change, I had $3 in quarters. And then I had $6 in my wallet. And I had $3 in my account. And God said, how many threes is that? And I said, well, that's 4 threes. Now, the way I wrote it is 4 times 3. And then I said equals 7. And I'm like, no, it doesn't. It equals 12. But God had me add it, not multiply it. But there is another. He was showing me who my spouse was even before I got here. Okay? I just wasn't aware because, your mind only knows what it knows, and you don't know what you don't know. And hindsight being 2020, I now realize that God was showing me my husband. Because God says to leave it. I'm like, okay. Um, so, So, back on April 15th, 2023, God had me look up 415, which means Elohi, Yisrael, the mighty God of Israel. And in Hebrew, 415 means mercy without compassion, cruel. Oh, without mercy, without compassion, cruel. Um, and then Hebrews chapter 4, verse 15 says, to labor to enter God's rest. For we have no high priest which cannot be touched by with the feeling of our infirmities, but was an all point tempted like we are, yet without sin. And that floored me. Because I have been laboring. I have been working diligently, doing God's will, following God's will. And this last week, I entered into God's rest, God's peace. I have heard of it. I have listened to many different prophets of God talk about it, explain it, but until you actually experience it, it is something that it's euphoric. Like literally from the time I left on Friday, the 21st, I did not feel numb. I did not feel, I was in awe. Like, Father, why am I not crying? Why? And to this day, I'm still like, why am I not crying? Why am I not upset? Like, I should be upset. And God's like, because you worked. You did your job. You did your work for me. And now, because of your obedience, you are on the other side. You have been delivered. You have been freed. Can't make this up. Can't make this up. Now, I don't have a date on this particular one, but I know it wasn't on the 15th. This is sometime in April. God brought me Fishgate. And I looked it up in the Bible. It means follow me and I will make you a fisher of men. I was like, what? And the man at the time that I wasn't quite sure if he was the one God had for me, posted a comment about a fish that didn't want to sell his land, so a bridge could be, so his land in the sea. Like he's like, no, this is my home. I'm not leaving. So they built a bridge around his home. And then God showed me that the doors and the logs have been repaired. The walls have been rebuilt of the temple. So as we cleanse ourselves, well, we don't cleanse ourselves. God cleanses us, but by walking in His plan, by walking according to His will, by speaking the words that He has us speak, by doing the things that He has us do, and repenting and being disciplined by God along the way, allowing God to remove whatever ungodly ideas or thoughts or feelings we have because of the way we were living in the world. He allows us to feel His love and His holiness. And as we continue to follow in that, we have to ensure that we don't sin, that we don't fall back into the world. And the way to do that is by keeping a life of prayer, a life of fasting, understanding the times, understanding the spirits that you're coming up against, you know, because they don't change. They're always the same. But not forgetting your training, not forgetting your teaching along the way that God has given you, and allowing you to come into a new covenant with Him and answering the call of the Lord. Bear with me. Okay, so that's the end of that. So then God had me write down what happened in October. And this was back in 2023. And so on October 21st, I wrote down everything I did from October 21st to October 29th. Okay? Now, the month isn't necessarily important. The dates are 21st, 26th, 27th, 28th, and 29th. So God had me drive up to Sholo. I spent the night in Sholo, which is a city in Arizona, which is where my son lives now. I went there, I spent the night, I prayed, and when I arrived back into town on the 28th, I was called into work. And I was called in to work at noon. And I did not leave until midnight. And then the 29th was my day of rest. So, if we look at it, okay, so in October, the number 10 is full circle, right? 21, 26, 27, 28, 29, okay? When did I get let go? March 21st. If we go to what I did, on the 26th, God had me mark His words once again. And then on the 27th, God had me write out what I wanted to happen. What God didn't have me share with you guys is that on the 26th, I sent a text. No, it wasn't the 26th. It was on the 21st and it was on the 23rd. On the 23rd, I sent my husband a text thanking him for releasing me from working, because he's now leading me. And so on the 26th, I received a text message. Now, in between all of this, I was hearing words about the nosy spirits, the gossiping spirits. And so there's this lady and her husband who I became friendly with while I was there. But she said something untrue about me to the daughter of the owner of the store that I worked at. And I got into trouble then. But God said he cleared that up. And so she reached out to me. And she's like, hey, so I just heard that you quit. And I was like, oh. Or she says, hey, I heard that you're no longer here. Like, what's going on? Like, you know, I know that's not true, that you wouldn't have just left. And I said, what were you told? And she said, oh, they told me that you quit. And I said, well, you know, it was time for me to move on to something else. But she was fishing for information. And then she said, oh, I asked your boss, your old boss, the boss man, the one who terminated me, why you were no longer there. And he said, due to legal ramifications, he couldn't clarify what happened. He couldn't tell me what happened. And I said, oh, well, at least he's holding up to his end of the bargain. But I didn't provide any details. She wanted to know. She wanted the skinny, so then she could gossip with whoever she wanted to gossip with. You know, these spirits, they always want to get back into your life. They always want to find out how they can snag you. Okay? Now, on 3/27, God had me go to Ezra, chapter 8, verse 31. On the 12th day of the first month, departed to Israel. And I was like, of all the verses, of the first month of the first day of the Hebrew calendar, or the first day of the 12th, or the 12th day of the first month. And that was confirmation about something else. We'll depart to Israel, the homeland. Joel chapter 2, verses 23 to 32. The former rain and the latter rain in the first month, we store what the locusts ate. We're in the first month of Nisan, which is Nisan. So we're in the first month of the year, the Hebrew calendar year. And God is saying that there will be an overflow and of wine and oil. And I talked about this in a previous post, in a previous video. And so now we're going to fast forward. Now, this was on Monday, 3/31 of this year. And he brought me to last year, 3/28, when he gave me Isaiah chapter 9, verses 2 through 7. Remember I told you that he would come back and have me go back to scriptures I didn't write out? And Isaiah chapter 9, verses 2 through 7, which was given to me on March 28, 2024. I'm going to show you. Okay. There it is, Isaiah. And it says, for God has broken the yoke and taken the burden off of me. Which is why I feel so light. I don't feel heavy. I don't feel discouraged. I don't feel, every once in a while I do get this overwhelming feelings of depression, but they're not my depression. They're not my sadness. It's my spouse who's missing me. But he's got to be obedient to God. And if he doesn't, then he's going to reap what he sows in his disobedience. But we'll get to that. And so then God brought me to Proverbs 8, which is, wisdom crieth out her truth. And I have been crying. Now remember, where was it that I said that God gave me Proverbs 8? and I hadn't looked it up at that point. But I cried out to God when I got punished for talking to my husband, for encouraging him, for talking life into him, because he got scared. And so God is bringing me back to March 20th. Okay? When he had me speak a word. Of this year. Okay, so I'm going to go back to March 20th. So, why did I write March 20th? Oh, now I know why. It's not March 20th from my dates. So if we go to Esther, chapter 8. Okay. Verses 1 through 15. And here it is. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month of Sivan. And God is using the dates interchangeably. Okay? I knew this to be March 20th in the Gregorian calendar because of the way that the word is worded. Okay? Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is the month of Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof. And it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and to the deputies, and the rulers of the provinces, which are from India unto Ethiopia, 127 provinces. So 127. Every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing, according to their language. Now, the way God showed it to me was the reason that he said that this was about March is because in March, we march forth. And I was like, what? So, back in March of 2024, decreed a thing. Okay? On March 4th, Ezekiel 33, chapter 33, verse 33. Well, when all this comes true, then they will know that a prophet was among them. Okay? I can. Now, the decree went out against the enemies of God. So, they're about to be overtaken. Now, the song that came into my head in that moment is by Mercy Me, and it's called I Can Only Imagine. Now, the way that this came to me was in my memories. this was a movie. So I heard the song first. I did not know there was a movie about the gentleman who wrote this song, or about the group that helped him put this song together. And he talks about how he could only imagine what he's going to do when God shows up in his life. Is he going to hit his knees? Is he going to thank God? Is he going to be able to even speak? And I can tell you, all three. I couldn't speak. I hit my knees. I prayed, and I thanked God. And I have not stopped praising God, because this level of peace I have never felt before in my entire life. Ever. Okay? So, on March 31st, God gave me the season of delay is over. And he brought PD Society. I can't remember what the PD stands for. But she's a prophet for God, and she speaks and educates God's children. And she talked about Jonah. Full circle. Okay. And I have to prepare, because we're going to be going there very quickly, and I need to make sure that I am there when we're ready to go. Okay. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to... Why did I write that? Okay. Well, anyway. So, God gave me Acts 2:22, miracles, wonders, and signs. And I know I wrote it on a different date, because I remembered that God had shown it to me on April 14th, 2023. Oh, that's why. Because it's in 2020. That. Oh, sometimes I'm glad I write dates. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the things that God has given me. This is not the one that has... Oh, that's right. Hang on. I wasn't very consistent with my date labeling, which is part of my, what do you call it? It upsets me. Oh, here it is. Yeah. So, yeah, God had me, so he had given me Acts 2:22, miracles, wonders, and signs, back on April 14th, 2023. And he had me write down that April 14th is the 104th day of the year. What are the chances that 414 is going to be 104, which is 14? So God had me look up 14 in the Strong's Concordance. And in Greek, it means Abba, which means to be will, or in the Hebrew, it means Abba. Or, no, sorry, wrong, upside down. In the Greek, it means Abba, to be willing, to consent. In Hebrew, it means agathurgio, to do good. And 104 in the Greek means a letter, a memo, a communication. It also means in the Hebrew, always, unceasingly, which means God was bringing me full circle, saying there is going to be a communication. And once it begins, it will be unceasing. Like there will be no stopping it. You will not stop talking to each other anymore. Talking about my husband. And so she also talked, so Acts 2:22 came from Sunray. And she was talking about different things that God gave her. And he gave her the word rescue. And this was Diani Neves. Oh, so much information. It just throws at me, and I'm just trying to capture as much of it as I can, trying to really understand. And so God led me to understand that a rescue is to free from confinement, where you're being kept by force. And this is all going to make sense because this dream I had this morning was not a joking dream. And then God gave me, he had me look up confinement. And it was being held from moving freely. And that's how I felt when I was working at this restaurant. I felt like I was being held from being able to move freely, from being able to move the way that God wanted me to move. Because I was being told, don't talk to people. Work harder. Be more than everybody else. And I was like, you're not holding them to the same level of requirement? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, why? So I just kept going to God. Father, like, what am I to do? And so then God had me look up. So he's been showing me 45. I'm like, is that a date? Time? I'm not sure. So I looked up 45, and it says, Avia Bomb.